My name is Tenley Carp, and I'm a partner at AGG in the DC office, Washington, DC office, and my practice is government contracts. So the question is, what are a couple of the top things that I would tell a foreign company who might come to me and ask how to get started in selling to the U.S. government and whether they should even consider selling to the U.S. government? The first tip is for those companies to become familiar with the FAR. You simply cannot try to do business with the U.S. without understanding the rules that govern that relationship, and those rules are called the Federal Acquisition Regulations. So that's really tip number one. Tip number two, I think, is for those companies to consider starting out as a subcontractor. They don't necessarily have to have the relationship, the primary relationship with the federal government that makes them a prime contractor. They can start out by selling their goods and services as a subcontractor to another company, which is the prime contractor. And that can be a nice segue for them to understand the rules of working with the U.S. government. And I think maybe my third tip would be for a foreign company to have a presence here. It's especially important for a foreign company to do that if they want to take advantage of a contract that is being restricted to small businesses, because they can't gain the advantage of the small business, even if they're small, unless they have significant operations and they're paying taxes in the U.S. Everything from office space or brick and mortar, depending on what they're making or what they're selling, employees who are living and working here, but mainly really paying taxes. It's really important. That's the test. So there are a couple of additional rules that a foreign company needs to know about if they're going to try to sell to the U.S. government. They need to know about the Buy American Act, which is it's a preference program so that companies selling to the U.S. government are selling products that were manufactured and the U.S. government using U.S. materials. But there are exceptions to that. So foreign companies can still sell to the U.S. government if they have, for example, a free trade agreement, for example, even an international trade agreement such as the World Trade Organization Government Procurement Act. If the company who is trying to sell to the U.S. is on that list as a party to that agreement, then depending on the value of the products they're trying to sell, for example, for a WTO country, it's right now about $183,000, then that's an exception, and they're on the same footing as a domestic, as a U.S. company trying to sell to the U.S. government. So there's also the Trade Agreements Act. That's another exception to the Buy American Act. And under the Trade Agreements Act, depending on the country, they may have a situation where they are substantially transforming the product that they're selling to the U.S. in an acceptable country. The U.S. government is the most incredible customer in the world because it buys the most amount of goods and services from outside companies, from contractors of any entity in the world, and the U.S. government pays its bills. So as a point of consideration, is it worth the effort? My answer would be yes. And many contractors have done very well selling to the U.S. government. The U.S. government has many needs, especially the government's very interested in new technologies, artificial intelligence, and the creativity of people around the world to move our society to the next level. I think because it's a complicated area, there are lots of reasons for a foreign company to consult with either an attorney or a consultant before coming over and just setting up shop. So a foreign company needs to understand the Buy American Act, the Trade Agreements Act, understand any exceptions that might apply. And even if none of those exceptions apply, they can still sell to the U.S. They just might be at a price disadvantage. There's a price preference for companies which are selling products manufactured here in the U.S. with U.S. materials. But they can still sell to the U.S. They just might have a tougher time in the competition. The U.S. government does business abroad in many countries and with many foreign firms. So another way for foreign companies to do business with the U.S. government is to look for opportunities in their home country. So if a company is already doing business with the U.S. government in a foreign country, there may be relationships with contracting officers and program managers and others that would help smooth the way for the company to start selling in the U.S. There may be opportunities that lead from that foreign country business to selling actually in the U.S. This actually can save a lot of time and expense and is a very efficient and kind of a smart way for a foreign company to start out cultivating relationships and doing business with the U.S. government.